She sent me a 5-page relationship contract listing my flaws and duties. I smiled, signed it, but added one clause. Any breach on her part costs $10,000. 2 weeks later, she violated Clause 8 and actually paid. I'm 33, a project manager in a mid-sized logistics company. My girlfriend, Emily, 29, is a paralegal. That detail's important, because if you've ever dated someone who treats every disagreement like a court case, you'll understand how exhausting that can get. We met 3 years ago through mutual friends. At first, I thought her attention to detail was refreshing. She noticed everything. Dates, appointments, the way I folded laundry wrong. Apparently, towels have a presentation side. Over time, though, I started noticing how that attention to detail was really about control. She corrected people mid-sentence, kept tabs on her friends' finances out of curiosity, and once got genuinely upset because I didn't forward her a work email chain she wasn't part of. Still, she had her good sides. Smart, disciplined, great sense of humor when she wasn't using it to win arguments. So I stayed. About 6 months ago, we had a string of small fights. Not about anything major, just the kind of things couples normally talk through. But with Emily, everything had to be formalized. Once, when I forgot to unload the dishwasher, she texted me a full paragraph about patterns of irresponsibility. I remember thinking, God, she'd turn our relationship into a spreadsheet if she could. I didn't know how right I was. It was a Thursday night when she came over, holding a manila folder like she was serving me legal papers. "We need to talk," she said, in that tone that makes every man wish he were anywhere else. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, pulled out a stack of papers, and slid them toward me. "What's this?" I asked. "A relationship contract," she said matter-of-factly. "I've outlined our communication expectations, responsibilities, and conflict resolution mechanisms." I stared at her. "You're serious?" "Completely," she said. "Healthy relationships have structure. Couples that formalize expectations tend to last longer." 5 pages. Typed. Numbered. Sections labeled household duties, emotional accountability, and my personal favorite, breach and consequences. Under household duties, I was responsible for laundry, with folding according to her preferred system; grocery shopping, to be approved by her nutrition plan; taking the lead on romantic planning, at least twice monthly. Under emotional accountability, she wrote, "Partner must verbalize gratitude for acts of service within 24 hours or risk being labeled emotionally negligent." And under breach and consequences, repeated noncompliance may result in a probationary period during which intimacy will be withheld. I read the whole thing twice. Not angry, not shocked, just weirdly impressed by the audacity. When I looked up, she was watching me like a lawyer waiting for a client to sign. "I just think it'll help us stay aligned," she said sweetly. "You spent hours on this," I said quietly. "Days," she corrected. "It's fair, don't you think?" I smiled. Slowly. "You know what, Em? I'm glad we're getting organized." Her eyes lit up. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "Let me sign this." I took the papers, added my initials next to each section, and, before handing them back, flipped to the last page and added my own Clause 8, partner accountability. It read, "Any breach of contract by either party, including verbal hostility, dishonesty, or manipulation, will result in a $10,000 penalty payable to the non-breaching partner." I wrote it in simple, legal-sounding language. Even cited a mutual indemnity clause for flavor. Then I signed. "Here you go," I said, sliding it back to her. She frowned, scanning the new clause. "Wait, what's this?" "Just a small addition," I said. "For fairness. Mutual accountability." She hesitated. "That's not necessary." "Of course it is. You said this was about structure and equality, right?" Her ego wouldn't let her back down. She sighed. "Fine. Whatever. I'll sign." And she did. 2 weeks later, the breach happened. We were at dinner with friends. Someone joked about relationships, and Emily, in her usual way, took it too far. She laughed and said, "Oh, please. I basically have to manage our entire relationship like it's a job. He'd forget to feed himself if I didn't make lists." The table laughed. I smiled politely. But that line, "like it's a job," stayed with me. After dinner, I asked her about it. She rolled her eyes. "Babe, it's just a joke. Don't be sensitive. You said you manage our relationship." "It's true," she said. "You need structure." I'm just better at maintaining it. I nodded slowly. Got it. And that's when I quietly pulled up the PDF copy of our relationship contract. Section 8. Clause 8. Line 2. Verbal hostility, dishonesty, or manipulation constitutes breach. I emailed her a copy that night. Subject: Notice of breach, Section 8 violation. Attached: a Venmo request $4.10,000.00. When I sent the email, I wasn't trying to start a war. I just wanted her to see herself, reflected in her own logic. I expected anger, maybe a long rant about not taking things seriously. What I didn't expect was the silence. For a full day, she didn't respond. No text, no call, not even one of her passive-aggressive seen receipts. By day 2, I started to wonder if maybe she was genuinely processing it. Then, late that evening, I got her reply. Subject: You're insane. You're seriously using that thing against me? It was supposed to be a tool for improvement, not a legal trap. This isn't funny. I'm not paying you a cent. You're being ridiculous. I read it once, smiled, and forwarded it to my personal attorney, Dana, the same one who handled my rental contracts and tax stuff. I attached the relationship contract, PDF, and asked, out of curiosity, is this enforceable? She called me back 20 minutes later, laughing so hard she could barely talk. Ethan, what the hell is this? A domestic comedy project, I said. Just hypothetically, though. She calmed down and said, technically, it's not a standard legal document, but it is signed, dated, and acknowledged by both parties. If it came before a small claims court and a judge had a sense of humor, it could hold up as a civil agreement, especially since it contains clear terms and mutual consent. So, I could actually send a demand letter? You could, she said, still chuckling. And I think you should, for the principle of it. So I did. Using her firm's letterhead, Dana drafted the most perfectly deadpan, professionally worded notice imaginable. Subject: Notice of breach of domestic agreement. From Dana R. Fielding, attorney at law. To Ms. Emily Sanders. Pursuant to Clause 8, partner accountability, of the mutual domestic agreement signed and dated, insert date. This letter serves as formal notice of breach. The undersigned client, Mr. Ethan Caldwell, hereby demands payment of $10,000 as outlined in Section 8A, payable within 10 business days. Failure to remit payment may result in small claims action for breach of informal contract, per California Civil Code Section 1614. Please govern yourself accordingly. I didn't even have to send it certified. I just CC'd her work email. She replied within 2 hours. Subject: Are you out of your mind? You're trying to ruin my career. I work in a law office. You can't just send me fake legal threats at my job. I replied, it's not fake. It's legally formatted. You taught me that precision matters. An hour later, she showed up at my apartment. No knocking. Just walked in like she used to, holding her phone and that ridiculous contract in her other hand. This has gone too far, Ethan, she shouted. No, I said calmly. This is exactly how far you took it. I'm just meeting you there. You're humiliating me. You humiliated us the day you made our relationship a performance review. She threw the papers on the table. It was supposed to make us stronger. It made you feel in control, I said. Now it's just paperwork. She sat down, deflating, and rubbed her temples. You actually think a judge would make me pay? Maybe not, I said. But that's not the point. The point is, I play by your rules. You don't get to be mad that I learned the game. She was quiet for a long time, then said softly, you really don't love me anymore, do you? I looked at her, the woman who'd once cried because I forgot an anniversary, who now measured affection in bullet points. I don't even think you love you anymore, I said. You just love control. That night, she left without another word. The next morning, I got a notification, Venmo, $10,000 received from Emily Sanders. Caption: per Clause 8. I almost laughed out loud. Not because of the money. I didn't even keep it. I donated it to a legal aid charity for domestic dispute victims. The irony was too perfect. 3 weeks later, she posted a story on Instagram. When someone shows you they're just as cold as your ex, believe them. I didn't respond. Didn't block her either. Because the best response is to be exactly what she never understood. Unbothered. 6 months later, I started dating someone new. Her name's Julia. Art teacher, completely opposite of Emily. She laughs too loud, forgets to text back sometimes, and doesn't care how I fold towels. It feels like oxygen after living in a contract. When she first came over and saw a copy of the relationship contract framed in my hallway. Yes, I framed it. She burst out laughing. You kept it. Oh yeah, I said. That's my tuition payment in the school of red flags. Update 1. It's been about 8 months since the contract incident. Life moved on quickly, at least for me. The startup I work for just landed a big client. My new relationship with Julia is simple, light, and exactly what I didn't realize I needed. No terms, no clauses, no emotional checklists. But apparently, Emily wasn't done writing the sequel to our little courtroom comedy. It started when a friend texted me a screenshot from LinkedIn. It was a post from Emily, something like, when personal relationships turn toxic, professionalism and boundaries are your greatest tools. Some people will even fabricate contracts to manipulate you. Know your rights. It had hashtags like hashtag self-growth, hashtag healing, and hashtag boundaries. The irony nearly made me spit out my coffee. She was, of course, talking about me. I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't like, didn't even view her profile. But as it turns out, when you work in law, and especially when you use legal terminology in a personal dispute that becomes public, people notice. A few weeks later, I got a call from Dana, my attorney, and by now friend. She was half laughing, half sighing. You're trending in small legal circles, she said. That sentence sounds like a curse, I replied. Apparently, someone at Emily's firm saw that post and recognized the wording from your contract. She had apparently bragged to coworkers months ago about writing a relationship agreement. She bragged about that? Oh yeah, Dana said. She called it a personal accountability experiment. Except now that the screenshots of your Venmo transaction are public record in small claims filings. I blinked. Wait, someone actually uploaded that. It's part of the civil filing, Ethan. Your Venmo receipt, the attorney notice, all of it. Anyone can search the docket. She paused, letting that sink in. Her boss found it. Apparently, the firm didn't find it inspirational that one of their paralegals had drafted and signed a domestic relationship contract, complete with financial penalties, especially one that ended up being formally cited in a legal demand notice. According to Dana, who knows someone in that same firm, the partners had a quiet conversation with Emily about maintaining the firm's professional image. 2 weeks later, she was no longer employed there. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone. Honestly, I just felt sad. Not for her, exactly, but for what she'd done to herself. She'd turned every aspect of her life into an argument, and in the end, even the law she loved couldn't protect her from the consequences of her own precision. A few months later, she sent me one final email. No greeting, no apology. Just, you really humiliated me. I hope you're happy. I stared at it for a long time before typing back. I never wanted to humiliate you, Emily. I just wanted to stop being cross-examined for loving you. Then I hit send, archived the thread, and never heard from her again. These days, that framed relationship contract hangs above my desk in my home office. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Never argue with someone who mistakes control for care. They'll always think they're negotiating, even when you're just trying to breathe. Last week, Julia noticed it while helping me organize files. She smiled and said, "You know, if you ever write a book, that should be the cover." I laughed. What would I call it? Clause 8, she said. It fits. Because in the end, that clause wasn't about money. It was about boundaries, something Emily spent 5 pages trying to define and never truly understood. Final update, it's been 3 years since the contract. 3 years since a woman I once loved handed me 5 typed pages outlining my relationship duties and accidentally taught me more about self-respect than any therapist ever could. And somehow, I don't regret any of it. I'm not angry anymore. Not at Emily, not at the way it ended, not even at the part of myself that stayed as long as I did. Because looking back, I realized that the entire relationship was built like her document, full of structure, logic, and rules, but no warmth. Everything had a term, a clause, a condition. Nothing had grace. When love becomes an itemized checklist, it stops being love. It's just risk management with emotional wallpaper. Professionally, life's been kind. The project I managed grew into its own company. I now lead a small team. People I trust, people who actually listen without needing Section 4 communication protocols. Sometimes, in meetings, when someone jokes about We should get that in writing. I have to hide a smile. If only they knew. I still have the framed copy of the contract, but it doesn't hang above my desk anymore. It's in a different spot now, on the wall of my guest bathroom. People laugh when they see it. It's become a conversation piece. Most think it's satire. Only a few know it's real. As for Emily, I haven't heard from her since that last email. I know through a mutual acquaintance that she left law entirely. Apparently, she's been freelancing as a relationship coach, of all things. The irony would have once made me roll my eyes. Now, it just makes me hope she's happier doing something that finally fits her. Maybe trying to rewrite her own clauses. Julia and I are still together. She teaches art, keeps her studio messy, and laughs at how different we are. When she leaves brushes in the sink or forgets her keys, I don't say a word. Not because I'm trying to be the bigger person, but because peace doesn't come from control, it comes from trust. She once asked me if I'd ever sign another contract. I told her, sure, maybe one day, but it'll just be a marriage license, short, simple, and mutual. She smiled and said, good. Mine would only have one clause anyway. What's that? I asked. No negotiating kindness. The other night, I opened my old email archive and reread the PDF one last time. It didn't make me sad anymore, just nostalgic, like flipping through a manual for a machine that never really worked, but taught you how to build the next one better. At the end of it, under my signature, I'd added the same words I always use now when I sign something important. Clause 8, mutual accountability. Because that's all real love is, in the end. Not obedience, not leverage, just two people holding themselves accountable for not ruining something good. I closed the file, deleted the folder, and took a deep breath. For the first time, it felt like the contract was truly fulfilled, not in court, not in cash, but in clarity. And maybe that's the only deal worth making.